Bend Around the Wind by Skylea. Chapter 72. Never Doubt. Bruce was familiar with Thor's moods and quick temper, but he didn't consider himself to be the best to handle it. He had good control over his own temperament, but that did not make him suitable to control someone else's. He was just not all that good at it. When Thor first arrived and butted heads with Loki, the best Bruce could do was to tell him that Loki's been here for a while and caused no trouble. Then he repeated that Loki would not go anywhere. Thor was somewhat reassured by his words because Bruce was not emotionally invested in all this like Tony was. But that was really all he did. Right now, he did not know what to do. He really just wanted to call Steve and let him handle Thor. He was good at it. He knew how to talk to him and get him to be reasonable. All Bruce could do was to be there. People tended to mind their temper a bit more around him, even Thor to a certain extent. It was a passive sort of help, but he had nothing better to offer. Really, he was not the kind of a doctor. He was not suitable for this sort of thing. He was a nuclear physicist, sometimes a medical doctor when there was need for it, not a psychiatrist. And he was pretty sure that Thor and Loki needed therapy, like lots and lots of therapy for their mountains of issues. He had absolutely no idea how Tony intended to do this. Now the mess with Hatchet just made things look even more complicated. He really wanted to call Steve. Sadly, he was rather certain that Tony wouldn't want that. "Doing better?" Bruce asked. Just to fill the silence, Thor turned to look at him solemnly. The gashes on his face were still there, although they started to heal.
"I am conflicted," Thor said. "My heart tells me one thing, my mind another, and the few things they do agree upon is not something I can do with a good conscience."
Bruce didn't dare guess what those things were. He didn't even know what to say to that. Fortunately, Tony got back a few moments later, saving Bruce from having to try and give some advice. Again. He was good at observing or analyzing a situation as objectively as possible, but the Thor and Loki problem was an emotional minefield, and he dreaded to get sucked into it. "So, since Loki's gone for a few hours," Tony started.
"What?"
Thor turned his scowl on him. "Relax, only for a few hours. I think a little distance will do you good at the moment," Tony said. "Also, I want to be able to pick your brains about all this bullshit without distractions. I wanted to stay out of this as much as possible, but that's obviously not going to work. You've been here for less than a day, and my house already looks like a disaster zone."
"My apologies for the damage,"
Thor said. "Don't worry about it," Tony shrugged. "I knew this was not going to be a cakewalk." When Tony got close, he clapped his hands in a let's get to work way. "So," he caught Thor's gaze. "Hatchet."
"What about him?"
Thor grumbled. "What about him?" Tony countered. "It's that I was this close to convincing Loki to sit down and patiently, well, as patiently as he's capable, listen to your side of the story, and then you went and got into a fight with his best friend." Thor opened his mouth to speak, but Tony just went on. He was on a roll. Bruce could tell. "Just because he managed to recover, miraculously, may I add, from the psychotic break he suffered and all the torture he's been put through by those bastards, it doesn't mean that he's completely fine. So you can't just pull shit like this." This time, Thor had even less time to attempt to interrupt because Tony put up a hand and silenced him right away. He would not be interrupted until he spoke his mind, so it seemed. "No. I know Hatchet's at fault too. Heck, I don't even need to stretch my imagination that much to see how he might have provoked you. But if you want to get along with Loki ever again, even remotely, you gotta learn how to do with Hatchet. I would have thought that out of all of us, you would have been the best equipped to handle this. You grew up with Loki. You should be very familiar with their special brand of assholery more than any of us."
"May I speak now?"
Thor asked. Tony took a breath, visibly calming himself, then he nodded.
"I know how to deal with sharp tongues, or at least I hope I got better at it,"
Thor started.
"It is not why I dislike Hatchet."
"Well, I'm all ears, Big Bear," Tony said. Thor rubbed his forehead as he thought for a moment, but it didn't take long for him to gather his thoughts.
"My parents were always wary of his presence in Loki's life," he started. "They did not want him to influence Loki too much. You must understand that it was not an unfounded fear. I did not know this the first time I met him, for I have never been an expert in matters of magic, so I did not understand what his strange appearance meant. It was only some time later that I learned what failings actually were."
"He was raised by the Fae," Tony said simply.
It's not just that.
Thor shook his head.
Fae create many kinds of failings. It takes them years to make one, and sometimes one Fae is not even strong enough to do it. They are made with magic. Usually they pick an animal they like or an old plant and soak it in their magic year after year until they're satisfied with the result. Sometimes they are known to steal small children to do the same to them. I know not if that was the case with Hatchet. Once the Fae are done, the creature created is not what it started out to be, but something different. Vessels for the magic they have been exposed to.
Why would they make failings if it is so hard then? Bruce asked. In recent years, he couldn't help but get at least a little interested in magic. It became a part of the world, the reality. Nobody could afford to be ignorant.
The way I know it, they are usually used as guardians. I have seen a troll lair guarded by failings that had to be mountain lions once. They were ferocious and powerful beasts. And some Vanir warriors told me once that the Fae court in Vanaheim is guarded by goblins who ride on white failing stallions. Some say they also do it just to extend the life of the animals who loyally serve them or to make trees come to life. If you were in a forest, I'd see trees with pure white bark and violet flowers. You know you have ventured into a Fae territory.
Not counting the stealing children bit, this does not sound that bad so far, Tony said.
At least nothing that can be Hatchet's fault as a failing.
So why didn't your parents like him?
As I said, failings are vessels of Fae magic. A wolf is no longer a wolf, but a wolf-shaped magical creature. But a beast is a beast, so it matters not when it follows the whims of the magic coursing through its very veins. But those who were not mere animals lose much once the Fae are done with them. They do not have hearts, like normal living things do.
Tony frowned, shook his head, then opened and closed his mouth a few times.
You gotta explain this some more, he said finally. Failings are controlled by the magic they're soaked in,
Thor said.
They do not see the world as we do, for they cannot feel the same way. Magic is raw power. It may act like a living thing with a mind of its own, but it has no heart, no conscience, no remorse, or care for consequences. It may want things, or like this or that, but it is no true affection. Magic does not feel. It merely exists.
Tony was still frowning.
So you're saying that Hatchet's a failing. He is no elf, no man. He is just Fae magic, entrapped in a cage of flesh and bone. The body, you see, once belonged to an elf child, but he is long gone. There is only magic in there. And magic does not feel, so it is dangerous, for it has no inhibitions, no matter how alive it may seem.
Tony's frown was still in place, and he seemed to be deep in thought, but Bruce had questions too. So you're saying he's sort of a sociopath? He asked.
I'm not familiar with that word,
Thor said. Someone who does not have the same range of feelings others have. Bruce tried to explain. Seriously, he was no psychologist. How did he get into this sort of situations? So they cannot relate to others, do not feel remorse for lying or being violent, like they have no sense of right and wrong. Thor thought about it for a moment.
I believe that is quite accurate, yes.
It's baloney, Tony said. When Thor turned to look at him, he continued. I've known Hatchet for over a year now. I would have noticed if this was the case. I've seen him pissed. I've seen him annoyed, happy, concerned, and 100 different things. So this is bullshit.
But those feelings were all because of Loki, were they not?
Thor asked.
Mostly,
Tony said.
Fae have a tendency to get attached to things, which is why my parents tried to keep Loki away from Hatchet, without having to deny him visits to Elfheim altogether. Fae get obsessed about the few things they care about. It is the same with failings. He may have acted fine in the past year you have known him, but he most likely just followed Loki's lead. If he would have been with Loki at the time of the invasion, I have no doubt that he would have fought on his side against us.
Yeah, that's loyalty, Tony said.
It is more than that.
Thor shook his head.
If my brother would tell him to go out on the streets to slaughter men guardians, he would do just that. He also always encouraged Loki whenever he did, no matter if it had been right or wrong. Loki was never vindictive about magic before Hatchet showed up. He never used it as a tool to take revenge, but Hatchet encouraged his mischief and trickery, praised him even for things he shouldn't have done.
Bruce thought about everything Thor said for a few moments and compared them to what he learned about Hatchet so far. It wasn't adding up. Not completely. Not to question your word or anything like that, he started, but how much of what you just told us about failings are certain facts, and what are just rumors or assumptions? Thor's frown was telling. I mean, where did you learn all this? Experts? People who know the Fae very well?
Everyone knows these things,
Thor said. Okay, not a good start. Yeah, just like everyone knows that you shouldn't have Pop Rocks and Coke together if you don't want your stomach to explode, Bruce said, and Thor's frown deepened. I mean, are you absolutely certain that's how failings work? Has anyone ever asked a Fae about it? Or do you just assume?
What do they teach about Fae in Asgard anyway?
Tony asked.
I mean, besides, how to kill them. You have asked me what I know of the failings, and now you question me,
Thor asked.
Don't take it personally, big guy, but...
Tony scratched the back of his neck as he walked closer to the god.
Okay, here's the thing. Everyone in Asgard knows that frost giants are 10 feet tall hulking beasts, right? Not too bright, but incredibly strong, cruel, ugly, barbaric monsters. That's general knowledge, am I right? Everyone in Asgard knows that.
Bruce was pretty sure he knew where Tony was going, and looking at Thor's face, he knew too.
And yet, here you have Loki, who is 6 foot 2 inches tall, a master of magecraft, incredibly attractive, and he has one of the brightest minds I have ever seen. What I mean is that, which is more likely? That Loki is some very, very strange exception, and that there are no other Jotnar like him, or that what Asgard knows and teaches you about the Jotnar is false, or simply a crude generalization.
Thor looked away from Tony, who kept talking, and stepped to the side to capture Thor's gaze again.
You still with me? Is what I'm saying registering? Yeah? Good. Now let's follow this logic with the assumption that maybe most people in Asgard don't know anything about certain races, or what they know is plain wrong. Now tell me how much chance there is that they're wrong about the Fae, just like they were wrong about the Jotnar. Heck, I can go on. What does Asgard teach about humans? Are we defenseless and weak simpletons? Are we considered too stupid to know anything about the universe and too weak to defend ourselves? Isn't that what most Aesir think? I never thought,
Thor started, but Tony raised a hand again and interrupted him.
This is not strictly about you, Tony said. It's about the fact that in Asgard you merely learn that everyone who is not Aesir is some sort of lesser being. Jotnar are monsters, the Fae are vicious creatures, humans are stupid little things, the Vanir are weak magic wielders. Should I go on? Or did you get my point? We do not, Thor started. Trust me, I heard plenty about what you learned in Asgard as kids. How you are the protectors of the 9 realms, the good and noble heroes, the very beacon of hope. Everyone else is either weak and needs to be protected, or monsters that need to be killed. Pretty black and white, if you ask me. I would have assumed that you already learned how untrue all of that was, and yet I still hear stupid things coming out of your mouth. Have care how you speak, Thor warned him, but it was half-hearted. I'm not going to care how I speak in my own house.
Tony shot back firmly, staring at the other steadily.
I want you to think about every single thing you just told us about failings and repeat the facts only. I don't care about gossip or tales or superstitions that came out of fear of the unknown, and I definitely don't want to hear any racist Aesir crap. Can you do that for me? Fact is something you can prove or was proved by someone else. By the way, the one about failings being exposed to excessive amount of Fae magic is true. Loki told me as much. But I'm not so sure about the rest.
We just want to make sure that we don't judge someone based on false information, Bruce added. That's reasonable, don't you think?
I have to think this through, Thor said quietly. You do understand what I'm trying to say, though, right?
Tony asked him.
The god nodded. That I assume more than what I actually know. I know you have good intentions, Thor,
Tony said.
You're a good guy. Seriously, it's pretty awesome, considering how much more screwed up you could have turned out to be. Thor huffed. Thank you. I think. Yeah, well, maybe it's because you're just like 1/4 Aesir.
Tony smiled a little.
Thor frowned at him again. With your mother being a Vanir and your father a half-Jotun. Oh, that. I never really thought of it. Maybe you should, Tony told him.
Thor stared at him silently for a long moment.
Let me just think about the failings again, he asked. Take your time,
Tony said, and clapped him on the shoulder as he passed him to sit down next to Bruce. Bruce was proud of Thor that he did not get angry when Tony started ranting at him. It was one of Thor's best traits that he accepted it when he was in the wrong fairly easily if you explained it to him why. He was always eager to better himself to make himself a better man. He was willing to learn new things and new perspectives. Bruce was never going to forget the day Steve told Thor why he didn't approve of absolute monarchs, while he simultaneously assured him that he could be a good king as long as he aimed to be a good man instead of a good warrior or general. Thor sort of just sat there for the rest of the day, looking incredibly lost in his thoughts. Bruce sometimes really didn't envy Thor. Being prince or king sounded all glorious, but the stress had to be awful. In the end, Thor carefully thought about all the things he believed he knew about failings and narrowed those down to a few simple facts. Failings were created when Fae poured excessive amounts of magic into another living being, plant, animal, or something else. Failings usually guarded things that were important to the Fae, or they lived as their companions. Failings tended to be very aggressive if you threatened the things they protected, and they generally seemed more instinctual than rational. They were just as mischievous and irritating as the Fae, and they did not have the best set of morals. And just like the Fae, they could be almost obsessively attached to certain things, or certain people. Thor did not have or known of any proof concerning the other things he said. He was rather grim about it. Look, I'm not saying that you have to like him, Tony said. Hatchet's pretty hard to like, believe me, I know. But you have to deal with him being here. He won't go anywhere, not ever. Not if he has a choice in the matter. I mean, he willingly spent over 3 years looking for Loki.
Of course he did,
Thor said, still with that grim, displeased tone. I would say that's a good thing, Bruce chimed in. I mean, for Loki to have reliable friends outside of a romantic relationship. Friendships have a really nice balancing effect.
Just because I may not know Faelings much, it does not mean I was wrong about his influence on Loki,
Thor said.
What I said about that still holds true. I doubt he would have any sort of balancing effect on him. I still believe that he is not a fine companion.
You can believe what you want, Thor, Tony told him, but it's not up to you to approve or not. Only Loki can decide whose company he wants to keep. Thor grunted something, still not happy at all. And it's not just a friendship, Tony continued. It's more than that. There are a lot more... Tony was searching for words for a moment, so Thor finished instead of him.
Yes, brotherly. I'm aware,
he said sternly. Tony stared at the god for a moment. If this is a jealousy thing, I'm going to get my suit and kick your butt. Thor turned to look at them. Bruce could see it now, Thor's point of view, especially after their breakfast this morning.
I am not,
he said firmly. Bruce wasn't sure. He believed him. Good, because if you were, you would be an idiot, Tony told him, scowling. It's parental, you big dolt.
What?
Thor asked in confusion.
It's not brotherly.
They're... whatever the heck you want to call it. Hatchet is not like a brother to him. Thor just stared at Tony, and so did Bruce, because he was not sure where he was going. Oh my god, Loki told me you're smarter than you look, so don't disappoint me now. Thor, Loki needs Hatchet. The sooner you accept this, the better.
He has made fine friends, and he has you now. He shouldn't need him as well,
Thor said. The look on Tony's face was either sad or angry or disappointed. Bruce couldn't tell. Right, we wouldn't want him to get too greedy about wanting people around who actually give a crap about him. Is there an exact number you think is appropriate? 4 is good, 5 is just too much luxury. He should be satisfied with less.
That is not
what was I thinking? Tony continued like Thor wouldn't have spoken at all. He was definitely angry now. He might end up with a healthy social circle. We wouldn't want that. Is that how it's always been? Was he always too needy for your standards? Shocking! He already had you. He didn't need anyone else. You're everything he needed. He should have just kept his mouth shut, followed you around forever like a good little brother. He should have been happy with what he got instead of wanting anything more.
Do not put words in my mouth,
Thor snapped. I don't have to. What you put in your own mouth is bad enough.
I do not begrudge.
Well, that is exactly what it sounds like. And you know what I say to that? Grow up and realize that not everyone works the way you do. Others need more, need different things. What is enough for you might not be enough for someone else. What is enough to make you happy may be just barely enough to keep someone else functioning. Maybe what you got in Asgard all your life was enough to make you content, but it just tore and pressed down on Loki until he broke. And none of you realized that until it was too late. Tony ran his fingers through his hair and took a deep breath. Thor didn't try to speak this time. You can say what you want about your parents wanting the best. Hatchet is weird. Yes, he's focused on Loki. Heck, he's even obsessed, you're right. But it does more good than harm for Loki to know that there's someone who will always put him first. Someone who will always think about his safety and happiness before anything else. That with Hatchet, he won't come second, after the greater good, a kingdom, or a favored sibling. So you know what I think? Hatchet may be crazy, but he will always think of Loki first and foremost, and that matters more than your opinion. Loki deserves that. He needs that. He needs someone to be there for him like that. Tony looked at Thor again for a long moment, trying to see whether his words were heard properly or not. Even I can't give him that, no matter how important he is to me, and I won't be around forever, either. So no, it's not brotherly, it's something more important than that. Thor stared at Tony with slightly widened eyes. It was shock, probably.
You're saying my brother looks at him like a father?
He said quietly, tentatively. No, I'm saying Hatchet loves him like a parent is supposed to love their child. Unconditionally. And you want to know what? If he had the chance, he sure would have done a better job than your father. Tony said those words with absolute certainty. Bruce could see a small flinch on Thor's face at hearing that. Screw bad influence, or whatever you were worried about. Tony continued. He would have taken care of him and loved him the way he needed it. None of you should have ever tried to take that away from him, and you better not even think about trying it now, because you're gonna have to deal with me then. Bruce did not dare interrupt the tense silence that followed Tony's words. Thor spoke silently after a few minutes passed.
I may be a fool sometimes,
Thor said,
but I do love my brother Stark. I have loved him for as long as I can remember.
There was a certain wet roughness in his voice that told Bruce that he was struggling to keep himself composed.
It just breaks my heart to hear you say that my love and friendship were not enough.
Thor... Tony relented, the anger slipping away from his tone.
No, I understand. Some just need more than what one brother can give. A poor brother at that.
It was not your job, neither your responsibility, Tony said.
And yet it still feels like a failure.
Thor shook his head. He sniffed once and took a large breath, squaring his shoulders and straightening his back, raising his chin up, like he always did.
Tell Loki that I do not intend to go back to Asgard just yet, where I must speak with Captain Rogers, and that we can continue to discuss matters when I'm back in a few days' time.
Want to go over to New York? Tony asked.
Yes. I think I need a little time to think, and some distance would help me greatly to keep my head clear. Just promise me that he will be here when I get back.
I promise he won't run away, Tony said.
Look, Thor, you don't need to say more.
Thor objected. Most of this anger rant was not directed at you, okay? I'm pissed at your father for the most part. Just never doubt that he still loves you. For some reason, those were the words that finally brought a bright sheen of tears to Thor's eyes and a brokenly hopeful look he didn't even try to hide. He huffed out a laugh that was nowhere near close to happy and nodded. Maybe he even believed it. Maybe he couldn't just then.